That's it. That's all he wrote in his diary. But on the day that Jerusalem had gathered together to celebrate the day of Pentecost, 120 followers of Jesus were gathered together. And suddenly the Spirit of God filled each of them and marked them with tongues of fire. On that very day, the church was born. That very day. But there was not one historian of the time to see the significance of this event. Sad to say that many Christians are like King George. When it comes to the day of Pentecost, nothing of any importance happened today. This, my friends, is one of 4 major festivals of a church year. Today, we celebrate the gift of God's Holy Spirit upon our lives, just as much as those who experienced it over 2,000 years ago. Today, my friends, is just as important as Christmas. It's just as important as Easter. But to my sadness, this day will go by relatively unnoticed. Why? Why is that? The Spirit coming at Pentecost seems to go unnoticed like the unspoken part of the Trinity. Even though we believe in the Trinity, we'll talk a lot about the Father, we'll talk a lot about the Son, but kind of squelch the Spirit a little bit. We don't talk a lot about the Spirit unless it's in church. It's okay to talk about it in church, but we don't really talk about it out outside of church. Why is it that we have such a hard time getting a handle on the Spirit of God? Maybe we just don't understand the importance of what happened on this day that we celebrate. Talking about the Spirit is not as sweet as talking about a baby that had been born in a manger, about angels singing to the heavens on high, about shepherds tending their flocks by night on a quiet hillside. Maybe we don't get excited about Pentecost like we do on Easter because there's no parade. There are no eggs to color. There's no pretty dresses or clothes to buy. No empty tomb to talk about at Pentecost. But I tell you, people, that Pentecost is one of the most important days of the Christian year. One of the most important days of celebration because it is God's day. It's God's very presence that entered each and every one of our lives. The Spirit is in each of us. God comes to us in baptism and remains with us throughout our lives as we grow in knowledge and we grow in the truth about God. A God that loved us so much that he gave us his only Son. I know that at one time or another you have all struggled. You have all struggled with the Spirit of God. Much like Jacob wrestled with God. And a lot of those after Jacob have wrestled with God. You have wrestled with God. You have wrestled with God. It happens to us day in, day out. But the Spirit helps us guide and make the right choices in life. The Spirit is there when you plant beans, when you plant corn, or when you plant wheat. It's there when you try to manage a business, try to raise a family. Spirit is in everything that we do. Spirit is there to bring power to our lives. Sometimes in a quiet, unnoticeable way. The Spirit of God is like a pair of eyeglasses. If your eyeglasses fit comfortable and do the work they're supposed to do, you hardly notice them. You know you're wearing them. If they're doing the work that they're supposed to do, you hardly ever notice them. Because they're not there to be noticed, but to help us notice. They're not meant to be seen, but seen through. But when we misplace a pair of glasses, we're sometimes in trouble. We not only lost them, but we cannot see to find them. The Spirit of God allows us to see and leads us and guides us to the world around us. Like my glasses that I have to wear. I once was blind, but now I see. The Spirit of God fills our life daily, not just on Sundays, people. Not just on Sundays, but daily. He wants us to be the kind of people that God has intended us to be from the beginning. There are people who look at the world differently. There are people who see the power of God. There are people who see the needs of others. People who see the glasses half full and not half empty. People who are faithful to the calling of God to love Him and to love their neighbor as they love themselves. We are, and we should be, a Spirit-filled people who are guided by the Spirit as we see the world through the eyeglasses of God. The disciples were told by Jesus, as we heard in John, that the Spirit will remain on them, on all of them, and teach them. And when the Spirit came like a violent wind, they knew exactly what they had to do. They weren't nudged, people. The disciples were not nudged out of the room. They were pushed out of the room to go out into the world and to spread the good news, the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's what they were doing. Because they were filled with the Holy Spirit. And they went out and they talked to everybody. Everybody was there, and they were not afraid to go out there in the temple courtyard and talk to these people. They spoke to each and every one in their own language because the Spirit had given them the gifts